Bullies shredded her new dress. She left bruises. They'll never forget. Kira Valdez kept her head down as she walked through the crowded hallways of Lincoln High School, her worn backpack clutched tightly against her chest. Her dark hair fell like a curtain around her face, hiding the nervous glances she cast toward the groups of students laughing and talking around their lockers. At barely 5 feet tall, with a slight frame that made her look fragile, Kira had learned early that invisibility was her best defense in this place. She had been at Lincoln for 3 months now, ever since her family moved from their quiet neighborhood in Phoenix to this bustling suburb of Chicago. The transition had been brutal. Everything here felt different. The accents, the social hierarchies, even the way students dressed. Kira's thrift store clothes and shy demeanor made her stand out in all the wrong ways. "Watch where you're going, freak," sneered a familiar voice as someone deliberately bumped into her shoulder, sending her stumbling against a row of lockers. The voice belonged to Madison Pierce, a tall blonde with perfectly styled hair and an expression of constant disdain. Madison was the undisputed queen of Lincoln's social scene, surrounded by her loyal followers who hung on her every word. Kira mumbled an apology and hurried past, but she could hear Madison's cruel laughter echoing behind her. "Did you see that dress she's wearing? I think my grandmother had the same one in 1985. The comment sparked a chorus of giggles from Madison's friends, each laugh feeling like a knife twist in Kira's chest. The dress in question was actually brand new, or at least new to Kira. She had found it at a consignment shop and had been so excited about the delicate floral pattern and the way it made her feel pretty for once. Now, hearing Madison's mocking words, all she wanted to do was disappear. What Madison and her followers didn't know was that beneath Kira's quiet exterior lay years of rigorous training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai. Her father had been a professional mixed martial arts fighter before an injury ended his career, and he had taught Kira everything he knew from the time she could walk. She could take down opponents twice her size, deliver devastating strikes, and had competed in numerous tournaments back in Phoenix. But her parents had drilled into her the importance of using her skills only for defense and only when absolutely necessary. "Violence should always be the last resort," her father had told her countless times. "A true fighter knows when not to fight." So Kira endured. She endured when Tyler Brennan, Madison's boyfriend and the star quarterback, would accidentally knock her books out of her hands in the hallway. She endured when Jessica Walsh, Madison's best friend, would make loud comments about her clothes during lunch. She endured when smaller acts of cruelty became daily occurrences, being tripped in the cafeteria, having her locker vandalized, being excluded from group projects. The bullying escalated as weeks passed. What started as verbal taunts grew into more calculated humiliation. During chemistry class, Tyler deliberately spilled a beaker of colored liquid on Kira's notebook, destroying weeks of carefully taken notes. When she looked up at him with tears in her eyes, he just shrugged and said, "Oops, Butterfingers." Mrs. Henderson, their chemistry teacher, barely glanced up from her desk. "Clean that up, please, and next time be more careful with your equipment." Kira felt her face burn with embarrassment as she knelt to clean up the mess while her classmates watched. She caught the eye of Derek Martinez, a quiet student who sat in the back row. He looked like he wanted to help, but when Madison shot him a warning glare, he quickly looked away. The pattern continued across her other classes. Teachers seemed oblivious to what was happening, or worse, they simply didn't care. Kira began to understand that in the social ecosystem of Lincoln High, she was at the bottom of the food chain, and no one was coming to her rescue. The breaking point came on a Tuesday in late October. Kira had saved up for weeks to buy a new dress for the school's autumn dance. It wasn't expensive, but it was beautiful. A deep emerald green that brought out her eyes and made her feel confident for the first time since arriving at Lincoln. She had even gathered the courage to hope that maybe Derek would ask her to dance. She was walking to her locker after lunch when Madison and her crew surrounded her near the stairwell. "Look what we have here," Madison said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Little Kira got herself a new dress. It's actually pretty, Jessica added, reaching out to touch the fabric. Where did you get it? The dumpster behind Goodwill. Kira tried to step back, but Tyler had moved behind her, blocking her escape. I think it would look better with some modifications, he said, producing a pair of scissors from his backpack. Please, Kira whispered, her voice barely audible. Don't. Madison smiled coldly. Oh, I think we should help you with your fashion choices. You clearly need the guidance. What happened next felt like it occurred in slow motion. Tyler grabbed the bottom of Kira's dress while Jessica held her arms. Madison took the scissors and began cutting, shredding the fabric into ribbons. Other students in the hallway stopped to watch, some pulling out their phones to record the humiliation. Stop! Kira cried out, but her voice was lost in the sound of tearing fabric and cruel laughter. Within minutes, her beautiful dress was destroyed, hanging in tatters around her legs. Kira stood there in shock, tears streaming down her face as Madison and her friends high-fived each other. Much better, Madison declared. Now you look like the trash you are. The crowd dispersed as quickly as it had gathered, leaving Kira alone in the hallway with the ruins of her dress and her dignity. She ran to the nearest bathroom and locked herself in a stall, sobbing until her chest ached. That night, Kira sat in her bedroom staring at the destroyed dress spread across her bed. Her parents had asked what happened, but she had made up a story about catching it on a fence. She couldn't bear to see the disappointment in their eyes if they knew the truth about how she was being treated. But as she looked at the shredded fabric, something shifted inside her. The quiet, scared girl who had been trying so hard to fit in began to fade away, replaced by someone harder, more determined. She thought about her father's words about fighting only when necessary, and realized that the time for avoiding conflict had passed. The next morning, Kira walked into school with her head held high for the first time in months. She wore simple jeans and a t-shirt, but there was something different about her posture, her stride. Derek noticed it immediately when he saw her in first period English. Hey, he said quietly as she sat down. Are you okay? I heard about what happened yesterday. Kira looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time. Derek had kind brown eyes and a gentle smile. He was tall and lean, with dark hair that fell across his forehead. She had noticed him watching her before, but had been too scared to acknowledge it. I'm fine, she said, and for the first time in months, she meant it. Derek seemed surprised by her confident tone. Listen, I wanted to help yesterday, but... I know, Kira interrupted. It's okay. I understand. Throughout the day, Kira carried herself differently. She made eye contact with people in the hallways. She spoke up in class when she knew the answers. She even smiled at Derek when he offered to walk her to lunch. Madison noticed the change immediately. Look at little Kira, she said loud enough for half the cafeteria to hear. I think destroying her dress gave her some confidence. Too bad it's completely misplaced. Tyler laughed. Yeah, she's acting like she's actually somebody now. But Kira didn't flinch. She met Madison's gaze steadily and said, I've always been somebody. You just never bothered to notice. The cafeteria went quiet. Madison's eyes narrowed dangerously. Excuse me? You heard me, Kira said calmly. I'm not afraid of you anymore. Madison stood up so quickly her chair fell backward. You should be. The confrontation that had been building for months finally exploded the next day during lunch. Kira was sitting with Derek, actually enjoying a conversation about books they both loved, when Madison approached their table with Tyler and Jessica flanking her. I think you forgot your place yesterday, Madison said, her voice ice cold. Let me remind you. Before Kira could react, Madison grabbed her lunch tray and dumped the contents all over her and Derek. Chili and milk soaked through their clothes as the entire cafeteria erupted in gasps and nervous laughter. There, Madison said with satisfaction. Now you both look as pathetic as you are. Derek started to stand up, his face flushed with anger, but Kira gently placed her hand on his arm. No, she said quietly. This is my fight. She stood up slowly, chili dripping from her hair and clothes, and faced Madison. The cafeteria had gone completely silent, everyone sensing that something significant was about to happen. You know what your problem is, Madison? Kira said, her voice carrying clearly across the room. You think being cruel makes you strong. You think hurting people makes you important. But all it really does is show everyone how empty you are inside. Madison's face flushed red. You little... I'm not finished, Kira interrupted, and something in her tone made Madison stop. You destroyed my dress yesterday because you were jealous. You saw me looking happy and confident, and you couldn't stand it. Because deep down, you know that all your popularity and all your followers can't hide the fact that you're a miserable person. Tyler stepped forward menacingly. You need to shut your mouth right now. Kira turned to face him, and for the first time, he saw something in her eyes that made him hesitate. Or what? You'll hurt me. You've been hurting me for months, Tyler. All of you have, but I'm done being your victim. Madison grabbed Kira's arm roughly. You think you're so tough now? Let me show you what happens to people who disrespect me. She raised her hand to slap Kira, but Kira caught her wrist effortlessly. Madison's eyes widened in surprise at the strength in Kira's grip. I said I'm done, Kira repeated, her voice deadly calm. Madison tried to pull her arm free, but Kira held on. Let go of me. Not until you apologize, Kira said. To me and to Derek and to everyone else you've hurt. Tyler moved to grab Kira from behind, but she spun around with fluid grace, catching his wrist and twisting it in a joint lock that sent him to his knees. The cafeteria erupted in shocked gasps. I don't want to hurt you, Kira said, applying just enough pressure to make her point. But I will if you force me to. Jessica tried to help her friends, but Kira simply swept her legs, sending her tumbling to the floor. It was then that everyone in the cafeteria realized they were witnessing something extraordinary. The quiet, shy girl they had all overlooked was systematically dismantling the school's biggest bullies. Madison, seeing her friends on the ground, panicked and swung wildly at Kira. But Kira ducked under the punch and grabbed Madison's wrist, spinning her around and putting her in a gentle but effective chokehold. This is over, Kira said quietly into Madison's ear. You're going to leave me alone. You're going to leave Derek alone. You're going to leave everyone alone, because now everyone knows that you're not as powerful as you pretended to be. Madison struggled briefly, then went limp in Kira's arms. Let me go, she whispered. Are you going to apologize? Kira asked. Madison nodded weakly. Kira released her and stepped back. Madison stumbled, then looked around at the sea of faces staring at her. For the first time in her life, she looked small and vulnerable. I'm sorry, she said, her voice barely audible. Louder, Kira said firmly. I'm sorry, Madison shouted, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry for being cruel to you. I'm sorry for destroying your dress. I'm sorry for everything. Tyler had struggled to his feet, his face red with humiliation. This isn't over, he snarled. Kira turned to face him, and the look in her eyes made him take a step back. Yes, it is. Unless you want everyone to see you get beaten up by someone half your size again. The threat hung in the air for a moment, then Tyler looked around at all the students recording the incident on their phones. He realized that his reputation was already destroyed. Without another word, he turned and walked away, Jessica hurrying after him. Madison stood there for a moment longer, looking at Kira with something that might have been respect. How did you learn to do that? She asked. I've been training in martial arts since I was 5, Kira replied. My father taught me that the strongest people are the ones who choose not to fight. But he also taught me that sometimes you have to stand up for yourself. Madison nodded slowly. I really am sorry, she said, about everything. I know it doesn't change what I did, but I want you to know that I'm sorry. Kira studied her for a moment, then nodded. I believe you, but actions matter more than words. Show me you're sorry by being better. As Madison walked away, the cafeteria gradually returned to its normal buzz of conversation. But everything had changed. Students who had never spoken to Kira before approached her table to congratulate her or simply to introduce themselves. Derek looked at her with a mixture of admiration and amazement. That was incredible, he said. I had no idea you could do that. Kira smiled and wiped chili from her hair. There's a lot about me that people don't know. I'd like to know more, Derek said softly. If you'll let me. Kira felt her cheeks warm. I'd like that too. In the weeks that followed, Lincoln High School was a different place. Madison kept her promise, becoming quieter and more considerate. She even defended other students when she saw them being picked on. Tyler transferred to a different school, unable to handle the humiliation of being defeated so publicly. Kira found herself at the center of a new social circle, not because she had defeated the bullies, but because she had shown others that it was possible to stand up for themselves. Students who had been quiet and overlooked began to find their voices. The culture of fear that had dominated the school began to crumble. Derek asked Kira to the winter formal, and she said yes. They danced together under the sparkling lights, and Kira realized that the shy, frightened girl who had walked into Lincoln High months ago was gone forever. In her place was someone stronger, more confident, and infinitely more at peace with herself. As she looked around at her classmates, some who had stood by and watched her suffer, others who had been suffering themselves, Kira understood that the real victory wasn't in defeating Madison and her friends. It was in showing everyone, including herself, that they didn't have to accept cruelty as normal. They could choose to be better, to stand up for what was right, and to create the kind of environment where everyone could thrive. Standing in Derek's arms on the dance floor, wearing a beautiful new dress that no one would ever dare to destroy, Kira smiled. She had learned that sometimes the quiet ones are the most dangerous of all, not because they seek violence, but because they understand the true power of choosing when to fight and when to show mercy. The bullies had tried to break her, but instead they had forged her into something stronger. And in the end, that strength had saved not just herself, but everyone around her.